What's up, everybody? A very happy Tuesday to you here on the Refuse to Lose Territory podcast. Brady Farkas with you, as always, your Refuse to Lose Territory podcast host and your Mariners on Roundtable Sports publisher. You can follow us, everywhere that you follow podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and you can watch the show live on YouTube. You can also check out all of our writing, myself and Taryn Kovac at marinersroundtable.com. We appreciate everybody who supports us there and everybody who joins in with our free community section, which is where we give you, the fan, a chance to have your voice heard as well. We write the sourced journalistic stories up top. You come in with your fan takes and your fan comments and your opinions on the message board below. That's marinersroundtable.com. If you're watching the show, you can see I am in a hotel room. I am on the road again. I am live in Pittsburgh for a new series between the Mariners and the Pittsburgh Pirates. First time we'll see the Mariners in Pittsburgh this year. First time we'll see the Mariners in Pittsburgh now in 2 years. We last saw them here in 2024. Mariners are 40-39. They are in first place still in the American League West, though it remains a frustrating endeavor. We'll be joined by Curtis Rogers, the Mariners pre- and postgame show host over at Seattle Sports 710, the flagship radio station of the Mariners. He'll be with us towards the back end of the episode. As is usually the case when I am on the road and recording late at night, just understand I am being a little bit quieter, I hope, than usual. I don't want to get thrown out of the hotel or get an angry knock on the door as I record this. So do not take what I hope is a more silenced voice for a lack of emotion or a lack of frustration or excitement or whatever. Again, I am trying not to get thrown out of the hotel. So Curtis Rogers will be with us again towards the back end of the episode. We got a lot to get to as I am live in Pittsburgh. So without further ado, let go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we go.
All right, so the Mariners, again, are 40-39. They are in first place. There are American League West games going on right now as I speak. It's just gone final. The Texas Rangers have beaten the Marlins, so they are 1.5 games back of the Mariners, same as the A's are as I record this. So, again, the Mariners are in first at 40-39. I think everybody still thinks it is their division to win or lose, but, again, it has been a frustrating endeavor. So let's just do a quick recap of the weekend before I get to a bunch of other things that I want to get to. The weekend against the Red Sox was very, very frustrating, but in my mind, very, very predictable. I don't take any joy in being right on this, but if you listen to this show, if you listen to Mitch Unfiltered with Mitch Levy when I'm a guest on his show, I said that this matchup with the Red Sox terrified me. And the reason was because the Red Sox were starting 3 lefties, and because the Red Sox have an elite left-handed closer, and it didn't even really get to Aroldis Chapman, but the 3 left-handed starters frustrated the hell out of the Mariners all weekend. The Mariners had no answers, again, for left-handed starters that are very, very good. Ranger Suarez was dominant on Friday. Connolly early was far from dominant, but the Mariners let him off the hook on Saturday, and the Mariners did enough to get to Peyton Tolley and ultimately win on Sunday, but it was a predictably frustrating series. And that's not even to mention the piggyback situation. And I'll be perfectly honest, the offense was so much more the issue to me on Friday night that it didn't even register with me to get mad at the piggyback situation. A few days later, I can sit here and say, oh yeah, it would have been nice to see Bryce Miller continue to pitch 5 innings, 7 strikeouts, 66 pitches. It would have been nice to see him stay in the game and hopefully keep the game at 1-0, and maybe the offense can run into one. And I think if you are someone who is mad at the piggyback situation after Friday, I think that that's a totally fair perspective. But from my perspective, I was just so kind of lulled by the offensive performance or lack thereof that I didn't really have it never really clicked with me to be upset at the piggyback. So the offense to me was the issue. The offense to me has been the issue, certainly against left-handers. The Mariners are 11-13 against left-handed pitching. It actually surprises me that they are that close to 500, but at least 11-13 in games started by left-handed pitching. It surprises me they are that close to 500, but it remains a problem. The right-handed platoon hitters are all hitting under 200 when we talk about Victor Robles, or collectively hitting under 200 when we talk about Patrick Wisdom and Rob Refsnyder and Connor Joe and Victor Robles. Weston Wilson, who's now up. Like, these guys are hitting collectively under 200, and it has been, again, a real sore spot for the Mariners offense as they've tried to get going here. They haven't been able to against left-handed pitching, and obviously Cal Raleigh had a big hit in the series against the Orioles, but he has struggled all season long. He's supposed to be part of the solution against left-handed pitching, and he hasn't really been that. He's been far, again, smaller sample size, but he's been, he's regressed back to the mean off of where he was from 2025 against right-handed or against left-handed pitching and hitting from the right side. So it has been a frustration. The series was predictably frustrating. I'm not surprised the Mariners lost 2 of 3. Of course, I'm disappointed they lost 2 of 3. They had a chance for a winning homestand. They didn't get it. They had a chance to further separate in the American League West. They didn't do it. Again, I wish I could say that I was shocked, but I'm not. Now, I never came here and outright predicted that the Mariners were going to lose 2 of 3 to Boston, but I said that this series was a nightmare for them. This matchup was a nightmare for them, and it was, in fact, a nightmare for them. So I am not surprised in the slightest at what happened, and the Mariners habitually have a hard time with the Red Sox no matter where they play them. So you throw in this team and this issue with that team and that team's strength and the history between these two teams, again, I'm not shocked, and I'm not even really angry because I'm not shocked because I saw this exact weekend coming. It's hard to be angry when you've prepared yourself for it, and that's exactly what I did. What do I want to see moving forward from the Mariners? Well, there's a lot of things, individually, but collectively, this team just has to continue to clean itself up. And look, we're going to hit the halfway point of this season, the nominal halfway point of this season in this series against the Pirates. It's time for the Mariners to clean up the little things. And look, you're not going to be a perfect baseball player, and you're not going to be a perfect baseball team. You're going to make physical errors. You're going to boot ground balls. You're going to strike out in big situations. You're going to roll over the ground ball and hit into a double play. Like, that is baseball, and I am understanding of that. But the things that continue to plague this team, that have plagued this team through 79 games, cannot continue to plague this team through the final 83 games. They cannot make outs on the bases. Now, I'm not faulting Julio Rodriguez and Josh Naylor for attempting a double steal on Saturday against Connolly early, but you had a rookie starting pitcher on the ropes in the first inning. Now, the Mariners got a run, but when Julio Rodriguez gets thrown out at third in the first inning and essentially they've let early off the hook, I mean, how different does that game look if it's 2-0? How different does that game look if it's 3-0? Lou Merloni, you heard him on Friday's show say the Red Sox were, 1-40 going into that series when trailing at any point in the game by 2 runs or more? The Mariners had a chance to get up 2 runs or more, and they ran themselves out of the inning, or in part ran themselves out of the inning. They've run themselves out of multiple innings. Even in the last month, I can feel like issues in Baltimore, issues in Washington, consecutive games. I can't even remember who it was against Detroit, where they made outs, in the 8th or the 9th inning, and they ultimately lose that series. So you can't make outs on the bases. You can't continuously give the other team opportunities. You can't continuously let the other team off the hook. The throwing errors or the errors covering first base by pitchers that are throws by Josh Naylor, those are physical errors, but they have to get cleaned up. We've seen some other parts of the defense look better. I think Julio Rodriguez's defense has looked better in the last couple of weeks. Having Cal Raleigh back should help on the catching side of things, but this team beating itself defensively with mental errors, and again, the physical stuff with Naylor, at least in a handful of situations. I don't want to pin it all on him. And then the base running, those things have to get cleaned up because this team is not good enough. I'm not saying they're not good, and I'm not saying they're not capable of being good, but they're not good enough right now to overcome the other team and themselves consistently. And that's the situation that they've put themselves in far too often in the nominal first half of the season, right? That is a frustration, I think, for me. That is a frustration, I think, for all fans. And I'm sure it is a frustration for the team as well, beating yourself. All right, we're going to fully get into the episode, but first, these words.
When my puppy Bella has something wrong, I'm not going to go around Googling what to do. Yeah, Kratz, let's have a better plan. Today's episode is sponsored by the ASPCA Pet Health Insurance Program. It offers customizable accident and illness plans that can fit your budget, your lifestyle, and even your pet's particular quirks. Because let's be honest, vet bills can add up fast. ASPCA Pet Health Insurance has been around for almost 30 years and has covered over 1 million pets. And when it's time to submit a claim, it's easy. Just use their app and receive reimbursement for eligible vet bills directly into your bank account so you can get back to focusing on what really matters, your pet. To explore coverage, visit aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. That's aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. Again, that's aspcapetinsurance.com/foul. This is a paid advertisement. Insurance is underwritten by either Independent American Insurance Company or United States Fire Insurance Company and produced by PTZ Insurance Agency Limited. The ASPCA is not an insurer and is not engaged in the business of insurance.
All right, so we talk about the Mariners needing to clean themselves up here, needing to clean up their performance and some of this, the little things here. And these are little things that, Dan Wilson is a stickler for the little things. He has talked consistently about wanting this team to be good at the little things, so they're going to get a chance to clean up those little things, beginning with the series in Pittsburgh on Tuesday night. And again, I am here in Pittsburgh right now. I got to tell you, and I'm sure a lot of you feel this way when you travel, you never realize how big your state is until you try to drive either directly across it or directly down it. And, I mean, my God, is New York a big state? Now I made this drive to Pittsburgh. It was every bit of an 8-hour drive. It was a 10-hour trip by the time you stop. So it's an 8-hour drive, and I was in New York for 6.5 hours of it. I'm like, New York just keeps on going. Now, I live in Eastern New York. I don't spend a whole lot of time driving to Western New York. So, in my mind, New York State ends at Buffalo. That's where my mind goes. I got to Buffalo in 4 hours, and there was another hour and a half beyond Buffalo. And I'm like, I need to look at a map again of the state I've lived in for 25 years because I did not know there was 90 minutes past Buffalo. But there was. So we eventually get to Pittsburgh, or eventually get to Pennsylvania, get to Pittsburgh, and I'm ready to go. Ready to go for the series on Tuesday. I will say I'm excited. There's a couple of big, prominent Mariners people also going to be in Pittsburgh, going to hang out and meet up with at the Jage page. A lot of you know Jage. At Mariner Muse is in Pittsburgh also this week, so get a chance hopefully to meet up with them on the concourse. I'm sure they'll be able to watch some of the game together. I'll be in the press box, but I get a chance to hang out with them and meet two guys that have been on this show at various points of its existence. So a nice Mariners collection of fans and social media influencers. Is that the right word? I guess it's kind of the right word. So social media influencers in town, so get a chance to meet up with them. I've never met them in person, so I'm looking forward to that. I had a chance to eat at the world's famous Primanti Brothers sandwich shop. And now I've never been to Pittsburgh before. This is my first time in Pittsburgh. I used to live in Pennsylvania briefly at the start of my professional career, but I'd never been to Pittsburgh. And there is a sandwich shop that I had known about called Primanti Brothers, very famous. And I'm never going to forget this. One of my all-time favorite broadcasters is Doc Emmerich. Now, you might know him as a longtime voice of the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals, Olympic hockey. I mean, Doc Emmerich to me is one of the all-time great broadcasters. For some reason, this sticks out in my head that several years ago, NBC Hockey was in Pittsburgh doing a Penguins game, and Doc Emmerich ate with Pierre Maguire at the original Primanti Brothers sandwich shop, and Doc Emmerich did a bit doing play-by-play of the Primanti Brothers sandwich guy making his sandwich, and he's hovering over the guy's shoulder, and he goes, whatever his name was, Mike Smith, 17 years in the service at Primanti Brothers, and he sprinkles the cheese, and then he gets the other piece of bread, and it was great because Doc Emmerich is the best. And it's always stuck with me that Doc Emmerich went to Primanti Brothers, and if I ever went to Pittsburgh, I have to come to Primanti Brothers. So I had kind of been resigned to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to get to Primanti Brothers just because it was going to be a little out of the way. But what do you know? I find the secondary Primanti Brothers on my travels. So I made sure to stop there. I'm going to post the picture on social media. Massive sandwich. I'm talking double meat, roast beef and cheese with fries and tomatoes stacked on top and two humongous pieces of bread that might as well have been French toast sizes on top. So I'm not really a foodie. I don't talk a lot about food. Food doesn't, while I enjoy good food, I'm not particularly like, oh, I have to have this or I have to have that. I'm not like a food elitist. So typically if you just give me, a rest stop dining on these trips, I tend to be fine, but I made sure that if I could have Primanti Brothers, I was going to have it. So I have had Primanti Brothers, and I am very, very excited about it. And now, after a 10-hour day, an 8-hour trip, or an 8-hour drive, a 10-hour day, and another one coming up on Thursday after the series ends, it's going to get me home at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now all we can do is hope that the Mariners justify all of that and go out and play a good series and clean up some of the things that I was talking about. All right, so let's move on to this. And this is something I've just been thinking about. And you're going to hear me talk about this with Curtis Rogers as well. I don't even know that this isn't really a question. It's not even, I don't know that it's not a concern either. I don't know what this is. I think it's more of an observation. All I can get to is this. I think last season, all of us, understandably, we think of last season as the best season of our lives. We think of last season as a magic carpet ride for the Mariners. And it was because of how it looked in September, winning 17 of 18 before that Dodgers series, I think. Winning a Game 5 at home and extra innings in the division series, getting to the ALCS Game 7, being one win away from the World Series. I think we correctly look at 2025 as a magic carpet ride. But the fact is that around this exact date last year, the Mariners were just 42-40. And I'm trying to remember how we felt at this time a year ago. And my guess is that we felt about the same amount of frustration as we feel right now with this team. And in fact, maybe we even felt a little bit more, right? I think, and what I'm getting at is that the next 3 weeks are really important to this year's team because that's where last year's team made its move. So that's kind of the thesis. But let me go back here. I think right now, Mariners fans are frustrated at this team, or frustrated about this season, rather, for a handful of reasons. One, coming off of last year's magic carpet ride, there's massive expectations on this team. And I think our hope was that through 79 games, this team would be, 50-29. That's our goal, right? That's the dream scenario. And if you're not going to be 50-29, could you be 45-34? But they're not that either. They're 40-39. So they are playing below our expectations. We were hoping by this point that they could be 7-8 games up in the division, and the second half was more about playing for the number 1 seed rather than playing for, just can you get in? So the underachieving nature of what the expectations were has us all frustrated. The injuries obviously have us frustrated because the injuries play a part in that underachieving, right? Are the injuries the sole reason this team is 40-39 and not 8 games up? No, it's not. I think we're all naive to think that or to say that. But I also think you're naive if you're saying it doesn't have any bearing on what's happened this season. It does have a bearing on what's happened this season. You were out Bryce Miller at a time. You were out Matt Brash now twice, Gabe Spire once. You were out, Donovan for most of the year now at this point, more than half the season. You've been out Cal Raleigh. You've been out, Randy Arozarena. Like, it's a real thing that the injuries are mounting and the injuries are taking a toll. So, there's a lot of frustration around that as well. But when I think back to last year, again, about this time, the Mariners were just 42-40. And we're sitting here wondering, another year where Julio starts slow. Another, they're wasting a historically great offensive season from Cal Raleigh. How can you waste the season that Cal is having? And the offense was stuck in neutral in a lot of cases again last year. And, man, they had injuries to Kirby and Miller and Gilbert. And then you're like, oh, man, can they withstand this? So there was frustration last year as well. And the Mariners were able to finish the first half of the year at 52-45. So I mentioned that they were 42-40 at one point. They went 10-5 in those final 15 games before the All-Star break to get to 52-45. Right now, They're 40-39. They would have to go 13-6. 13-6? 52-45? Yeah, they'd have to go 13-6 over the final 18 games to get there this year. I don't know if they will, but these next 3 weeks are going to be incredibly important for the Mariners because this is where last year's team started to make its move. And it's not always fair to compare this year's team to last year's team. They're playing different schedules and different situations with different health levels. But there are people, obviously, who are out there among us all who say this is the most frustrating season of their lives. This is a team they've never liked the Mariners season less than one right now. They've never found this team more unlikable. And all I can say is I think just as an observation, I'm not going to tell you how to feel, but just as an observation, last year's team to this point wasn't necessarily a whole lot better. Last year's team to this point was very, very frustrating also. And I think it's fair to recognize that. I think it's fair to say that. I think it's fair to say that last year's team got hot around this point, and we're waiting to see if this year's team can get hot at this point. So last year, if you think that the season was a dream-like scenario, you're right. It was in how it ended. But it wasn't a dream-like scenario up until this point. From this point forward last year, the team started to play a lot better for a while. And this year's team is going to have to play a whole lot better for a while as well. And that's why I think the next 3 weeks are so important for this team. This is where the money is made. I've told you all along, I think August is a brutal schedule, just absolutely dreadful. The road trips to Toronto and Boston and New York. They're going to play Milwaukee on the road as well, who's one of the best teams in baseball. And they're probably going to have to see Mizorowski and Schlittler and all of these guys. I mean, it's a dreadful, dreadful August. They better make the end of June and into July count, because if they don't, then I don't want to think where this season could go. Let's hope that this year's team does what last year's team did, which is get hot right about now, because they have the ability. Now it's about, like I said, cleaning up those little things in order to get there. All right, we'll be right back after these words. All right, let me tell you all about SeatGeek. You know I've told you about SeatGeek before. I'm going to keep telling you about SeatGeek. Why? Because I love using SeatGeek, and you should love using SeatGeek too. If you need tickets, then SeatGeek is where you need to be going. It really is that simple. I've used SeatGeek before when we're talking about going to Mariners games, right? I did in 2024, Mariners Blue Jays. I found SeatGeek tickets for concerts as well, and well, SeatGeek is really just the hub where everything happens in the ticketing universe, right? We're talking about 35 million downloads. It's the #1 rated ticketing app. There's more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek: concerts, sports, festivals, and more. It's baseball season to me. Some of you are thinking, right? Some of you are watching the World Cup. I'm watching only a little bit. I'm thinking about baseball all the time. I want you to be thinking about baseball all the time, right? Look, Mariners are on the road right now. I'm with them in Pittsburgh. You can follow the Mariners at home again at T-Mobile Park when they come back. How about the July 4th holiday taking on the Toronto Blue Jays? How about that? What better way to spend July 4th, a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest, than at T-Mobile Park taking on the Toronto Blue Jays, one of the Mariners' rivals, the team that knocked them out of the playoffs a year ago. I'm scrolling SeatGeek right now myself. Why? I'm thinking about going to a Mariners game as a fan. I don't ever do that. How about maybe me in Boston against the Mariners, late August, early September, Mariners Red Sox? That might be the next time I'm using SeatGeek to go find Mariners tickets. Again, SeatGeek has your back because each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Green dots are good, red means bad. Green is good, red means bad. Every ticket has their own buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys, right? I always have a code for you guys. So I have a code for you guys. This is, again, you can use code Territory10 for 10% off your next set of MLB tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any MLB tickets with promo code Territory10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. All right, so one more note on kind of the next 3 weeks for the Mariners. Trade deadline. A lot of people asking, how can this team improve itself at the trade deadline? What can they get? What can they need? Or what do they need? I got to tell you, I don't think there's a whole lot of help coming at the trade deadline. We talk about last year's team playing well at this time of the year and kind of forcing the Mariners' hands to go get Josh Naylor and to go get a Eugenio Suarez. I don't think those kind of moves are on the table this year because I don't think the Mariners really have a whole lot of needs. What the Mariners have now is a pretty complete roster. What they need are their current players to play better and play more consistently. This is not about, they've got 9 holes to fill. How can they do it at the deadline? They're not upgrading on Cal Raleigh. Josh Naylor's making $100 million. They're not upgrading on him. They're not benching Cole Young or Cole Emerson, and they're not going to bench J.P. Crawford either. Randy Arozarena has been excellent. Julio Rodriguez has been great. Dom Canzone has been great and right, and so is Luke Raley. So if you're talking about an upgrade, I mean, you're talking about upgrading the bench, either Robles or Refsnyder or, the backup infielder. They've got a backup catcher in Garver who they like. Like, they have a team. They have too many starters. They don't need a starting pitcher. So the bullpen is really the only place where I think you can see an outside upgrade come in to help this team. The bullpen is the spot that they could use another leverage arm. But beyond that, I don't think there's a whole lot of extra help coming. It's going to be bench and bullpen, and that's it. This team has everything else that it needs, barring injury. It just needs its guys to play better and needs its guys to play consistent or more consistent more often. So that is where I am at on the trade deadline. This is the time to get hot, and getting hot involves your internal options just playing better than they have so far. All right, let's get to the question that everyone is asking. Let's get to the topic that everyone's asking about, and that's what did the Mariners do with Rob Refsnyder? And I wrote about this at MarinersRoundtable.com, and I'm going to ask Curtis Rogers about this as well. I think all these things can be true, and I want to be very, very clear. I think Rob Refsnyder is a great dude, okay? I think he's a great dude. I've met him twice. I was there with him in spring training right after he got into camp in Peoria. Talked to him in his locker for 15 minutes. I thought he was humble. I thought he was nice. I thought he was warm. I had a warm personality towards the media. So I enjoyed meeting him in what was February at that point. And I spoke to him the other day when I was in Washington as well. I think he's a nice guy. I think he works hard. I think he's got a great resume. I think he's got a great story of being a former top prospect who didn't really get a chance to succeed and then found a chance to succeed later in his career and took advantage of it. So I like Rob Refsnyder. I was in favor of signing Rob Refsnyder. His resume dictated that it was a good move. I've been in favor of giving Rob Refsnyder continued chances because I believe in the resume, I've believed in the work ethic, and I've believed in what Rob Bradford of Baseball Isn't Boring or Buster Olney of ESPN have told us on this podcast about how important Rob Refsnyder was to the Red Sox, and I've been waiting for that to translate to the Mariners. So all of those things are true. I'm fully aware that I might be the last guy left on Refsnyder Island, or I might have been the last guy left on Refsnyder Island. The other thing that is important to note is that clearly it's not working for Rob Refsnyder in Seattle. I think that it is now time for the Mariners to consider other alternatives than Rob Refsnyder getting automatically started or starting automatically against left-handed pitching. Now, let me say this. This is not me calling for Rob Refsnyder's job. This is not me calling for him to be DFA'd like a lot of you are, right? Those are options, but they're not the options necessarily that I am advocating for. So let's just back up here and let's talk about what the Mariners' options with Rob Refsnyder are. Okay, Rob Refsnyder is hitting under 140. He's got an OPS plus of 26. He's hitting 069 at home. He's not hitting left-handers like he was brought in to do. Okay? All of that is true. The options are the Mariners can eat the money, a little more than $3 million at this point. They can eat the money, and they can DFA him. Now, DFAing him would open him up to go and play for a Mariners rival where he can go and hit better. Houston, Texas, right? Like, he can go to sign with any of those places and potentially hurt the Mariners down the stretch. So if they DFA him, he could end up there. It would also be an admission from the Mariners that they miscalculated on Rob Refsnyder or were wrong on Rob Refsnyder. And executives, no matter what the sport, no matter what the team, they don't really like to admit that they made a mistake. It's why you see quarterbacks that are clearly the wrong choice get, 2.5 and 3.5 years before they ultimately get replaced. It's just the way executives are. They don't like to admit when they were wrong. So do I think the Mariners want to DFA Rob Refsnyder? No. But they've ultimately moved on from Donovan Solano, who they paid. They've ultimately moved on from Dylan Moore, who they liked. They've ultimately moved on from Ty France, who was a former All-Star. They ate money to get rid of Mitch Haniger. So, at some point, there is a point where they are willing to move on from somebody. So DFAing him is an option. Putting him on the injured list is an option as well. Rob Refsnyder has dealt with a bulky knee. They could put him on the injured list. They could, if he's bothered by that still, they could put him on the injured list, and they could, give him an opportunity to get right with getting treatment and rehab games, etc. The thing that I think for now is the best option is what I'm about to tell you. And I think it is stopping the strict adherence to the platoon rules. In fairness, some of you have been calling for this for weeks. I haven't necessarily been calling for it for weeks. We've seen a pretty significant or pretty strict adherence to platoons from the Mariners, where when lefty pitchers pitch, it's Victor Robles and Refsnyder, or Wisdom and Connor Joe, whoever's healthy that hits right-handed. And against lefties, Dom Canzone and Luke Raley. Or against righties, Dom Canzone and Luke Raley. I think we're at the point now where Dom Canzone needs to play every day. And I wasn't always a believer in that. I wasn't always a believer in Dom Canzone, period. I think he's made a lot of people eat their words. Dom Canzone has been great. He hit .276 against lefties in limited action last year. He homered against Peyton Tolley on Sunday. He looks competent against left-handed pitching. I spoke with him last year in New York about his development against left-handed pitching. I think he's earned the right to be an everyday player. Now, I know he left Sunday's game with a hamstring issue, so presuming he is healthy, I believe he has earned the right to be an everyday player. So from now on, I would say that against left-handed pitching, the Mariners should start Dom Canzone and start Victor Robles, and then Rob Refsnyder should be on the bench with Mitch Garver. I'm not saying he can't ever start, but the automatic start shouldn't be a thing either. So in this scenario, I would say that, let's say this. Let's say Connor Joe is sent down and Randy Arozarena is back. So Arozarena is in left, Dom Canzone is the DH, and Victor Robles is in right. And Luke Raley is on the bench with Refsnyder, Garver, and whoever the backup infielder is. Right now it's Weston Wilson. So that would be my plan. Refsnyder is there to be a pinch hitter late. He's there for extra innings. He can play a little bit of outfield. I'm not saying he can never play, but I think we are past the point where he is an automatic start against left-handed pitching. And then kind of the wild card in all of this is Brendan Davis. I don't know that my plan here is in perpetuity because Brendan Davis is working back from his strained hamstring. Remember, Brendan Davis was awesome in spring training. He's been excellent for Tacoma as well. He mashes the ball, 115 mile per hour exit velocities plus. He's a guy that the Mariners like. He's a former top 100 prospect. He's nearly 10 years younger than Rob Refsnyder. He's cheaper than Refsnyder. He's under team control for longer than Refsnyder. So I think he's a guy that the Mariners are probably going to give a chance to at some point. So for now, I think Canzone is a play everyday guy, and Refsnyder is on the bench. And again, I'm not looking to staple him to it. I still believe in Rob Refsnyder more than most. But the numbers are what the numbers are, and where we are in the season is where we are in the season. The Mariners do need to spruce up the offense against left-handers. I think Dom Canzone right now is a better play. When Brendan Davis comes back, he might be a better play than Rob Refsnyder as well. In fact, I think that we are getting to the point where once Brendan Davis is healthy, he's going to force a really stark conversation on Rob Refsnyder's future. And if it's not Brendan Davis right away, then it very well might be Michael Arroyo a little bit later. But I think that the conversation on Rob Refsnyder's job, or starting job is already here. That's the conversation I'm having now, that Dom Canzone deserves it against left-handers. The conversation on Rob Refsnyder's roster spot is coming soon. Brendan Davis on June 3rd went on the injured list with a strained hamstring. Justin Hollander said the other day it shouldn't be much longer. Well, okay, what is not much longer? I don't know. But when Brendan Davis is ready to play at the major league level, then I think the Mariners are going to have a real conversation about giving him that chance. And again, if it's not him, if he has a setback, then I think it's going to be Michael Arroyo soon as well. So the conversation for today is on Refsnyder starting. The conversation for soon is on his roster spot in general. I don't enjoy – look, I've lost 2 jobs in my life in media. Media is a tough business, just like pro sports are, right? People lose jobs all the time. You read about it all the time. I've lost 2 jobs in media in my career, right? I'm, 36, 13-year veteran or whatever at this point of the media. I've lost 2 jobs. I take no pride in calling for someone's job, and I'm not calling for Rob Refsnyder's job now. So I'm not calling for it. I'm just telling you I think it needs to be a different role at this moment. But if he still doesn't have something going soon, then Brendan Davis and Michael Arroyo are going to force a conversation about his job. I'm not rooting for that. I want Rob Refsnyder to succeed because I want the Mariners to succeed because I like Rob Refsnyder as a person. And I do believe in rooting for good people. And Rob Refsnyder is good people. But that only takes you so far. There has to be good production as well. We're going to talk to Curtis Rogers about this right now. Curtis Rogers, pre- and post-game show host at Seattle Sports 710, the flagship home of the Mariners on radio. He is with us on the video chat line. So, Curtis, much appreciated, my friend. I appreciate you being with us as always. I believe a second or third time guest appearance for you. My friend, how are you?
Brady, doing well. And, I mean, look, I can understand things are frustrating watching this team go up and down all throughout the season's first half, but they're in first place. Let's remember that perspective here. But all in all, doing well, Brady, doing well.
You know, it's interesting. I was talking about this before you came on, and I don't even know that it's a question. It's more of an observation. The Mariners are 40-39, and it feels very, very frustrating. But last year, the Mariners were 42-40 around this exact same point, and it felt frustrating. And I don't know what's going to happen over the course of the next 90 games, but all I can say is that the best season of all of our lives last year was born out of a first half that looked and felt largely like this one did. And I don't know that that means anything at all, but I do think it's interesting that I think last year we have this kind of notion that it was all perfect. It wasn't all perfect for a long time.
It wasn't. And they spent a lot of the year just kind of searching for what was going to work, what wasn't. I think the thing that maybe people remember more fondly last year compared to this year is that we still had Cal's pursuit of all the home run records, and that made every single night, absolutely must-watch television when he was, even in the losses, he'd still hit a home run. He'd still, by this point last year, I think he had like 30-something home runs or close to that. Obviously, this year it has gone significantly different, but we've talked about this on our show, our daily show, Bump and Stacy, where there is frustration and anger are really similar. Like they're really close in our brains. I think it's very fair to be frustrated with where the Mariners are right now, but to be angry, to be mad, I don't know if that is fair, especially considering like all these injuries are stuff that really no one can control. Like that has been, I think, the most frustrating thing about this start to the season is all the injuries that have piled up, and you can be frustrated about it, but to be mad and angry, it's like, I don't know how they could prevent any of these from happening.
What have you made of Josh Naylor's performance? Because he's a guy who I think is starting to get some fan frustration. The power numbers are, I don't know if they're down. They're more consistent with his rest of his career rather than the end of 2025. The defensive question marks are something that we've all kind of talked about. The error on Sunday was egregious. The throw to Logan Gilbert that wasn't made on the throw covering first. What have you just kind of made of the Naylor experience first full year version?
It's leaving plenty to be desired at this point in the season. And, I mean, you look at his numbers over the course of his career, they're very similar to Ty France at this point, and I kind of wonder why they chose to pay Josh Naylor what they did when they never wanted to commit to Ty France long-term. I think Naylor's value right now is definitely in the clubhouse. You can hear every guy, say he's a great guy, a great clubhouse leader, somebody that they love playing with, and that's great. That's fine, and you want to have those guys that even if their performance isn't what we've expected it to be, they can be relied upon to be there to bring up clubhouse morale when needed. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to start performing. And the lack of slug from him, I think, has been the biggest shocker to me because that was something he really, really brought to the team in the season second half last year. I mean, there were quotes of him saying, I love hitting at T-Mobile Park. Like, this is a great place for me to hit. And the early results last year reflected that. But right now, it has not been that for him. I think his just complete disappearance or just not hitting the way he did last year, I think that has been a much bigger impact on this season than I think people are looking at because of all the other guys around him, specifically Cal with the injuries. Julio has been up and down. Obviously, people look at Rob Refsnyder. The addition of him in free agency has not worked out. And now you kind of look at Naylor and it's like, okay, dude, it's game 80 coming up on Tuesday. You're on pace for, like 14 home runs this season. That's not what a guy who's getting paid your salary is. That's not what we're asking you to do. We're asking you to be a force in the middle of that lineup. And I think right now it's just kind of lacking for him.
Let me ask you a series of questions that kind of lead to one main point here. Injury notwithstanding, as long as he's healthy, do you think Dom Canzone is at the place where he is an everyday player now?
I think so. I think his ability to spray the ball to all fields, I think his slug is needed in this lineup. And I mean, he is actually somebody you got to kind of pay attention to in this lineup. And I think he has earned that right now to be an everyday player, especially considering all the injuries throughout the rest of the lineup. I mean, he himself got injured, had to leave Sunday's game, but I think that bat is one that you can't really sit down right now.
So full transparency, this is coming out Tuesday. We're talking early Monday, so there is an off day's worth of potential things to happen by the time this comes out. So I'll ask you to play predictor, and I'll do it in two parts. Do you think by the time this comes out on Tuesday, Rob Refsnyder is still on the roster? And if you do you think he survives Brennan Davis's eventual health and return from a strained hamstring, which is said to be soon?
Yeah, that is one name in the organization that people have kind of been looking at, and myself included. Like he was tearing the cover off the ball in AAA prior to the injury, and just is kind of lurking there. Has been a former top prospect. That is definitely a possibility. I was kind of taken aback by his quotes in the Boston Globe over the weekend. Refsnyder obviously playing in Boston for a number of years and met up with a Red Sox media member and basically said, yeah, they don't like me out here. And he was referring, and they being the fan base. It is unfortunate how things have kind of turned on Refsnyder because I've followed his career. We went to college together at Arizona, right. And I've known him to be just an absolute gamer, a guy that is a guy that's going to show up and play his hardest. And I don't think it's a lack of effort on his part. I just think things just aren't clicking right now. And the Mariners are going to have to reach a point soon where it's like, okay, can we continue? Do we think this is going to turn? And if it doesn't, what do we do? And I think they're getting really close to that. I think he's still here. I think just because of how in baseball moves like that get made maybe like a month or two after they've kind of ran its course, just to kind of squeeze as much out of the tube of toothpaste as it happens. I mean, last year, so many people were kind of like, really, Donovan Solano, why is he here in August? And, it's kind of like that, but it's unfortunate to see it kind of go the way it's gone because of how good he was the last, 4 years in Fenway Park. Maybe it's, you look at his splits, it's definitely something with the ballpark here in Seattle. Like it is not conducive to his skill set because his numbers in Seattle have been pretty brutal to watch. But I think I think he's a good dude, but I just don't think it's working out right now.
So do you think he's on the roster? So you think he's here by the time this airs on Tuesday?
I
but
think so.
The day is coming potentially.
Yes, I think so. I think he is here in the next 24 hours, but I would imagine over the next few weeks as guys kind of work their way back, like if Randy Arozarena is back soon, Dom Canzone, if he's only, if he doesn't need an IL stint, I think there's going to be a roster squeeze coming. Brendan Donovan, who knows when he's back? I know he's sort of resumed baseball activities, but I think Refsnyder's days are numbered here.
Where are you at on some of the prospects and their potential impact later in the year? Like, where are you at on Michael Arroyo's chances or Las Montes' chances? Are those guys you're interested in as we think about ways to upgrade the offense, improve the roster, push for the playoffs, etc.?
Montes is an interesting one because I've always championed having a guy on your bench that can go yard at any given moment. I don't even
Mike
care.
Ford effect.
Exactly. There were people that season that were like, why is Mike Ford still here? And it's like, because he can hit a home run at any given point. Doesn't matter the pitcher. It doesn't matter who else. So maybe there's a role like that for Montes going forward in September or whatnot with this ball club. But the other names in the organization, I mean, obviously Cade Anderson and Ryan Sloan, they're knocking at the door. Not just knocking at it, they're bashing it down. I've talked to JJ Cooper, Baseball America, who said he's got Ryan Sloan above Cade Anderson because he's 18 months younger and just likes his stuff better. And honestly, I think Sloan's stuff is one that could play out of the bullpen a little bit better than Cade Anderson. I think he's just sort of a classic starting pitcher. I have a hard time seeing him coming out of the bullpen in any spot just because his stuff is not, it's not 98, it's not 99, but he's just so precise in his location. He's just ridiculous in that. But I feel like Sloan could come out of the bullpen in any spot and, blow guys away. So I look at him as maybe somebody that if you're hurting for a bullpen arm, which the Mariners certainly have been at times this season, and we don't know when Matt Brash is going to be back. They've sort of penciled in August as a potential return, but if you're looking for any in-house bullpen options, that could be one I think that could play in the season's final months.
Where are you at on the piggyback and what to do with the rotation surplus? Because obviously one of those guys could be moved to the bullpen to help alleviate the issues. It hasn't happened yet. Where are you at on what the pitching plan should be?
I think the pitching plan should be once they are through the season, once they're through the All-Star break, because they're not budging from the plan that they've put out there saying we're going to piggyback everybody through the All-Star break. I think once they are through that and they can reset their rotation coming out of the break because they'll have the 4 days off, I think they need to go to a 5-man rotation, especially because the games are obviously going to ratchet up in importance and you are still kind of fighting for your life in the American League West. These teams are not going away. The A's are right there. The Rangers are right there. Heck, even the Astros are still within striking distance of you. So I think you're going to need your best starting pitchers as often as possible. I also think you need to be done piggybacking Bryce Miller. I think he's been your best arm since returning. That is somebody that does not need any help getting through a game right now. Maybe George Kirby, you could potentially look at him as somebody that could use a piggyback here or there, but ultimately I think they need to be done with that. And being done with that, moving to a 5-man rotation obviously would mean Luis Castillo is the odd man out. I think he can potentially be a long reliever or a guy that can get you 2 innings here or there, 3 innings here or there if you need him. It stinks that it has to come down to that because of how important he has been to this organization since arriving from Cincinnati. But at the end of the day, you're trying to win ball games. You're trying to win as many as you can. And Castillo right now has been the biggest aberration in that rotation so far here in 2026. And I think the time is running out for him as one of your starting 5.
Curtis Rogers, 710, ESPN Seattle Sports 710, Mariners pre- and post-game show host. I listen to a lot of Mariners radio here on the East Coast. Unfortunately, I don't get to hear the full pregame show, but I hear excellent things across the board about Mariners radio coverage. And certainly the booth of Shannon Dreyer in the booth is getting a lot of praise as well. So the entirety of the product on Seattle Sports 710 is very, very good, and I enjoy listening to it when I am in Seattle as well, getting a chance to hear Curtis more directly. So Curtis, man, always appreciate our chats, and we'll catch up again down the road.
Brady, enjoy Pittsburgh, and I can't wait to do it again with you.
All right, that was Curtis Rogers, Seattle Sports 710. Again, Mariners pre- and post-game show host, and one of the good ones. We love having him on, and we will definitely do it again down the road. I am live in Pittsburgh, and that's what you need to know right now. We're going to have stuff from the Mariners clubhouse. We're going to have stuff at marinersroundtable.com. We're going to have Buster Olney on Wednesday of this week, just because of the very early day game on Thursday. We'll have Buster Olney on Wednesday morning of this week, so adjust your schedule accordingly. We will have back-to-back days here. Tuesday episode, this one, and then Wednesday with Buster. So we're on the road, and we are moving along. Remember, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can watch us. MarinersRoundtable.com. You can read us, and we'll be back at it again with Buster Olney on Wednesday. Mariners Pirates kicking off a 3-game series at PNC Park. It is supposed to be beautiful here. I'm going on the Roberto Clemente guided tour on this trip. I'm going to walk across the Clemente Bridge. I cannot wait to do all of that. Hopefully some Mariners wins accompany those great things as well. We will see you on Wednesday for Buster, and as always, go M's.